9.86 seconds. A 19-year-old running for a Division III program in southern Mississippi just posted the fastest 100 meters on American soil this year. No shoe contract, no recruiting trip, no school above the third tier of college athletics ever sent him a single letter. He ran it on a rubber track that was resurfaced with money raised by parents selling barbecue plates. When retired Olympic champion Dwight Carver saw the time on his phone, he didn't say impressive. He said something that made his own broadcast partner go quiet on air. We will get to that. But first, you need to understand just how impossible this number actually is. Because 9.86 doesn't just mean fast for his level, it means fast enough to have lined up in last year's World Championship final and not been the slowest man in the race. Against professionals who train year-round on six-figure budgets, a kid running on a borrowed track would have had a lane. And Trey Caldwell did it without a single dollar of athletic scholarship money. Picayune, Mississippi. If you've heard of it at all, it's probably from a hurricane map. It's the kind of town where the high school football stadium has better lighting than the only track in the county. And that track doesn't have lanes painted past lane 6 because nobody ever needed more than 6. Trey Caldwell grew up there in a house his grandmother owned outright, 2 streets back from the rail line that splits the town in half. He didn't run track until 10th grade. Before that, he played receiver, undersized, the coaches said, not the kind of frame that translates. A track coach noticed him outrunning the defensive backs in practice and asked if he'd ever timed himself in a straight line. He hadn't. The first time he did, on a handheld stopwatch on a Tuesday afternoon with nobody else around, it read 10.9. Slow by any serious standard. Nobody in that gym thought they were looking at anything. What they were looking at was a kid who would shave more than a full second off that number in under 3 years, without ever training at a real sprint facility, without a private coach, without anything resembling the infrastructure every fast kid in Florida or Texas takes for granted. Here's what the recruiting process actually looked like. Caldwell sent his junior year times to 11 Division I programs. Programs with indoor facilities, with strength staffs, with sprint coaches who'd produced Olympians. 11 emails, 2 replies, both form letters thanking him for his interest. No Power 5 program offered him a single dollar, not a partial scholarship, not a walk-on invite with a path to one. The state's flagship university, the school whose games play on television every Saturday in the fall, never responded at all. The message was clear without anyone having to say it out loud. You are not good enough for us. So he enrolled at a Division III school 2 hours from home, the kind of program that doesn't get covered, doesn't get streamed, and doesn't produce the kind of athlete recruiters bother flying out to see. He paid his own way the first year. But then comes the part of the story that almost nobody knows. To afford gas money for meets the school's budget didn't cover, Caldwell worked the overnight stocking shift at a grocery distribution warehouse 3 nights a week during his sophomore year, finishing at 5 a.m., sleeping 4 hours, then going straight to practice. He did this for an entire indoor season. His coach didn't find out until midway through, when Caldwell fell asleep standing up during a film session, and another athlete had to wake him. He could have quit the shift. He could have quit the sport. Instead, he asked his manager if he could move his start time back 45 minutes so he could squeeze in extra sleep before morning lifts. That detail right there is the whole story, not the talent, the schedule he built around it, alone, with nobody watching and no guarantee any of it would ever matter. Drop it in the comments right now. Does a kid running 9.86 on a warehouse shift schedule make it to LA? Or does the system find a way to bury him again before he gets there? I need to know. 9.86. Say that number by itself and it sounds like a statistic. Here's what it actually means. 18 months earlier, Caldwell's personal best stood at 10.41. He went from 10.41 to 9.86 in a year and a half, a drop most sprinters never manage across an entire career, achieved with none of the resources the sport considers standard for that kind of jump. 9.86. Now think about what that actually means against the rest of the planet, not against other college kids.
If Trey Caldwell had been standing in the blocks at last year's World Championship final, the race that decides who the fastest human alive actually is, that time would not have put him last. It would have put him in the conversation for a medal, lining up next to professionals with shoe deals worth more than his entire university's track budget combined. Let that land. Not third in his conference, not third among Division III sprinters nationally, inside the top handful of times run by anyone on Earth that year, at any level, on any budget. Here is the fact, stated plainly. No Division III sprinter in the history of recorded collegiate track and field has ever run a wind-legal 100 meters that fast. Not one. Not in 40 years of the division existing. That is not a small fact. That is a historic fact that puts this performance in a completely different category than really good college athlete. It places Trey Caldwell's name in a category that before this spring had no occupants.
After the race, there was no interview lined up, no camera crew waiting at the finish line. This was a Division III meet, after all. The only footage that exists is a shaky phone video shot by another competitor's mother. What did Caldwell do in the minutes after running the fastest college time in the country? He walked over to the chain-link fence at the edge of the track, where his grandmother was sitting in a folding chair she brings to every meet, and he sat down next to her without saying anything for almost a full minute. Then he asked her if she'd eaten lunch yet. Not a speech, not a list of every school that passed on him, just a kid checking on his grandmother. As for Dwight Carver, the three-time Olympic champion who saw the time and went quiet on a live broadcast, what he eventually said once he found his words was simple. I've watched a lot of humans in my life. I have never watched one come from nowhere like this. Los Angeles 2028 is 2 years away. Trey Caldwell will be 21, the exact age sprinters typically peak, arriving at a home Olympics with momentum nobody saw building until it was already too late to stop. A kid who worked warehouse shifts to afford gas money for meets, standing in an Olympic final on American soil, 4 years removed from a sport he didn't even play until 10th grade. Does he make that final in LA, or does the jump from Division III to the Olympic stage prove to be the wall that finally stops him? Drop your prediction below. I want to see this comment section split. And if you want to know what happened to the warehouse manager who gave him those 45 minutes back, that story is coming next.